So on today's episode, I have Tox Aruoture. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And you are an interior designer that also has a shop for children's shop in Chelsea.
That's correct.
But but you do a lot of designs and work around children and nurseries. So
That's right.
Tox, it's really, really nice to have you on. We've been speaking for some time. Just for the benefit of our listeners, I wanted to just explain how I've become to know you and where I found you. So you do these amazing workshops, and I just couldn't. I went on to Eventbrite. I found it there. And I just wanted to go. I've got 2 young kids myself, with the youngest one, we're already thinking about changing the room and how we're going to do it. So it was really good, but unfortunately, I couldn't make the event. And I just thought, well, let's get you on, because we've never had anyone talk about the interior design of a nursery or children for that fact. So it was really, really good to finally get you here as well.
Oh, thank you so much, James. Lovely to finally meet you as well. Thank you for having me on.
No problem.
We did have we had a workshop that we had scheduled, which we were supposed to meet you at, but that didn't happen. So I am indeed a nursery designer, and run the Babycot Shop, which is on Kings Road in Chelsea. We've been there now for 2 years, although I have been an interior designer for upwards of 10 years, about 10, 12 years or so.
Okay. Yeah.
I initially started off if I go all the way back, I started off as
I've got time.
All the way back. Okay, great. Started off as a medical rep, nothing to do with interiors whatsoever. I worked as a medical rep, worked with GPs and hospital doctors, then took some time off to have my children. I've got 4 children. At the time, I had 3. So they then took some time off and then went back to work, and there was some difficulty getting the exact hours I wanted in the company that I was previously working with. And I happened to be reading a book at the time where someone said, how do you know someone had written into the author and written in and said, how do I know what my gift is? And the author replied and said, your gift is that thing that you do so effortlessly, but everybody else wows at it. And for me, that was interior design, because everyone loved my home and everybody thought my home was beautiful at the time before children. And so I decided, you know what, let's go do a couple of courses. So I did a couple of design courses, started an interior design firm, and had been running that for about a year or just under a year, when one day my husband comes back from work and he says, why don't we move to the States? And I said, hey, yeah, let's go. So we sold our home and we packed our 3 little boys and off we went. And in the process, I purchased a shop that's not too dissimilar from the Babycot Shop. It was an existing baby and children's furniture store, specializing in high-end furniture. And purchased it and ran it for a few years, but then got affected by the recession in 2008 and closed it and moved back to England. And by the time I came back to England, I was expecting son number 4. So I have 4 sons. I like to say I have 5 because I count my husband as a son as well. So moved back here. You understand that, right?
Yeah.
Moved back and then noticed that there was absolutely nothing for babies and children that was luxury, that was beautifully and individually designed. Everything on the market at the time was mass produced. You know, mamas and papas was the best thing on the market. Mother care was very common, but nothing else besides that. So I began to source craftsmen who would make furniture that was uniquely designed and beautifully made, not from cheap cuts of wood, not from MDF per se, but from high quality hardwood, and found quite a few in different parts of Europe, linked up with them. And that's really how the Babycot Shop started. At the time, we called it Pumpkin Patch Interiors, because that was what we had named, that was what the shop in the US was called. Okay. But you see, time in the US, we were living in the South, and pumpkin means it's a pet name that fathers call their daughters. So anyone in the south of the United States knows what pumpkin is, but in the United Kingdom, no, it's pumpkin. So the name gave us problems, and then we changed the name to the Babycot Shop.
Great. But what a journey you've had, actually. That's crazy. But I mean, I think I admire anyone that wants to give it a shot and move to another country. That's what I did as well. And it can be exciting. It can be exciting, you know, especially when you've got 3 children already, and then
that's right,
moving back, you've got another. I mean, you're right when it comes down to these items of furniture that are being crafted in such a way, because I think anyone that wants to invest in that kind of quality can also pass it down through generations as well.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Pass it down. You know, it's such a precious period in one's life to have a baby that you don't, I mean, I've met moms who are still holding on to the bassinets and cribs that their own children had, and these children walk in pregnant, and we redress the cribs for them, 30-year-old cribs and bassinets, because they were beautifully made at the time, and they're such precious heirloom items. And that's the whole idea, is to make furniture that can indeed be passed down, not just because it's beautifully designed, but because it's safe and it's very well made.
Yeah. Let's talk about, first of all, I do want to ask you about your name, because it was one of those things where I was just like, if you know, I've got a daughter that's got a very unique name, and it's always interesting to find out what the story is behind it. So what's the story behind your name?
Okay, so my heritage is Nigerian. My family is from Nigeria. My name Tokes is the short form of Tokumbo, which literally does mean brought back from over the sea. And the reason why I was named that was because I was born in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and my parents were living there at the time, and then moved back to Nigeria. So I was literally taken over the sea, and that's what my name means. It means I brought her back.
Cool. It's an amazing name. It really is.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So we can touch on the shop in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about these workshops, because I think when I was reading what you actually do in these workshops, it sounded pretty amazing. So just tell our listeners about these workshops, and if you have any on soon as well, maybe you want to announce them.
Absolutely. So we have been running events in the shop, and it's really designed around what parents to be, particularly first-time parents, want to know. So we've had quite a few, like safety in the nursery. We've had a workshop where we've taught new parents and even parents of young children who may be having their second or even third child, how to make their home baby safe. You know, because for a first-time parent, nobody can explain to you just how often your child's going to grab the remote control, fling it. You know, your beautiful console table that has a heavy flower vase on it suddenly becomes, you know, a dangerous item or a weapon for a toddler. So we have different workshops. The one that you missed was designing a nursery for the millennial parent. And that's really taking you on a journey from what nurseries used to like, which was once upon a time the smallest room in the house, relegated to the back of the room, back of the home, and traveled through time. And because of social media and celebrities like the Kardashians, and so many people now want to show their nurseries to the world. And so the nursery room has become one where it's a status thing for some people. For others, it's an event. They even have nursery room reveal parties, just like you would have a gender reveal when the baby is first born, when the baby has been identified as a boy or a girl. And they have a nursery reveal party, which is when the nursery is beautifully decorated. Usually they would do that at the baby shower, and everyone can come in and see just how stunning it looks. Then we cover things like the materials that are used in today's nursery. Unheard of to use acrylic to build a crib, but now you can actually have an acrylic cot made entirely from acrylic because of safety and education in sustainability and safety and things that we're getting to know about, which we never knew previously. It means that there are materials being used now that were never used before. Some of it is controversial. I came across a cot that has a built-in iPad. I'm not so sure about that, but
Yeah, I've seen one of those.
yeah. And then there's a crib that actually, an electronic crib that actually rocks once the baby starts to stare. So it rocks the baby back to sleep. And helps parents to have, again, that is quite controversial, because some people feel, why would an inanimate object rock a human baby? Babies need to be cuddled, and while others feel, oh my goodness, this is the best thing. So
I'm
it's
like,
just,
why buy that?
I think after you've had like one or two, you're just like, you know what, I think I'm down with that. I want to sleep, but hey. So you have different, those are the sort of things that we cover. We also have experts come in and give talks, like first aid is on the books for this year. First aid, how to give a baby and a toddler first aid. A lot of people kind of just assume everything's going to be fine, and expect that they're always going to watch over their baby. And we all have the best intentions, but nobody just knows what's around the corner. Another workshop that we've had, which we have scheduled for this year, is color in the nursery. So a lot of people understand that color does have an effect on the mind, but not many people know that you can use it to your advantage when you're decorating the nursery. So for example, too much yellow in a room can make a baby irritable, so it's little things like that, and how to use color effectively so that you don't end up with a room where the baby is alert and awake and ready to play through the night and you don't end up with a grumpy baby either.
That's funny. We actually had someone all about psychology and color on. We had a guest a couple of weeks back, actually. But
really?
That was, but it wasn't focused on children. So it's also interesting that it does affect children as well. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Health and safety, and like the way that you would build a room around these days. You're right. Because my son is almost, he's a year next month, and he skipped crawling. He literally just went up and started walking, and we weren't prepared for that. So we're already guarding everything, and he's always going for the bin in the kitchen. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's it.
But you don't know that. This is the thing. So, it's always interesting.
And it's interesting, and even when it comes to buying furniture, because we hope the workshops are independent, and it's not really saying this only applies to our products or applies. It's really for anyone who wants to shop wherever they want. So it's looking out for things like your changing unit shouldn't have sharp corners on it. Your cots shouldn't have sharp. There are safety standards that every manufacturer must adhere to. But then there are common sense standards as well that, we try to build into our furniture. It's kind of, I've been doing this for a number of years, but in addition to that, I do have 4 real life children and they're boys. So I know what's possible with what, oh my goodness. Yeah.
So let's go back to the shop and the whole element of interior design. What's the current trends? What would you say are the most current trends right now if someone wanted to style their children's room?
So where people are going for trends, there is still a lot of neutrals, a lot of grays. About 3-4 years ago, gray literally burst onto the scene, and everyone's home's been painted in gray since then. We have a lot of parents still doing that. They want a gray nursery. Some people are going more for the traditional neutrals like beiges and browns and creams. But where trend is concerned, we are seeing a whole lot of botanicals. So you would have, so there's safari that's going on, but there's also botanicals, especially when it comes to wallpaper, and that's how it's introduced in wallpaper and fabrics, because often in the baby world, pretty much it copies the human, the adult world, I meant to say, not the human. Copies the adult world. So we're finding lots of large scale florals, like really giant floral patterns.
Uh-huh.
You might literally have one flower take up more than half the wall, and they look absolutely amazing. Usually you wouldn't decorate the entire nursery in that. You just have a feature wall, perhaps a wall that has the cot against it, and then have the rest of the walls would be in plain. Something else that's quite popular, particularly with girl nurseries, are flamingos. Flamingos, unicorns are also quite huge. I mentioned safari, that's also quite big. So with regards to colors, it's very natural. It's almost like we're all thinking along the lines of being eco everything. So it's very natural. Even when it comes to products as well, we now only sell organic mattresses, and these are mattresses that are filled with coconut husks and horsehair and lamb's wool. So there is no chemical, there's no foam in it whatsoever.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So then talking about the products, what are the three top things that people buy from your shop? Or what's the three most favorite things you've got in your shop?
That's kind of hard because, I was speaking to a customer just this afternoon. One week we're certain one particular cot design is number one, and then the next week it flips over and it's another. But the top three items I would say that we sell are the Tribeca cot, which is a beautifully designed upholstered cot. It's got curves on the top, and it's got this really traditional feel about it. It's quite chunky because it's made from wood, and it's quite thick and heavy. So it's very stately looking. It does borrow the Chesterfield effect by having buttons on the upholstery on both ends, which you can have buttons in a different fabric from the rest of the upholstery. So that's one. The Racy is another one that's very popular, very well loved, because even though, again, it's upholstered with buttons on either side, it's completely different design. It sort of straddles between traditional and contemporary. So we find that many of our clients in London would get the Regency, and a lot of people outside of London will go for the Tribeca. And the other item that sells, that we're quite known for, are our nursing chairs. So our nursing chairs are upholstered glider chairs, which glide and swivel 360 degrees. So imagine that you're in this extremely comfortable chair, rocking your baby to sleep, and you've got to pick up a bottle next to you. You don't need to twist your back or anything like that. You literally just swivel, and it swivels all the way around. It's the most comfortable thing. So we've got two designs that sell a lot, and the Salome is the number one seller.
Well, hopefully you would be able to share some images. Maybe we can stick them onto our blog, and then we can link them to your website. So if people are interested,
yeah, would love to.
They can go straight there. Good. All right. So what are the things to consider if someone is designing their first children's nursery?
Okay, so the first thing to consider would be space. When you go as a first-time mom or dad, you go shopping for the nursery, you will be bombarded with a plethora of items, and everything's beautiful. And you'd see that the furniture is sold in sets. You've got the chest of drawers, you've got the wardrobe, you've got the cot, you may have, you have all kinds of things. And the temptation, because it's so beautifully presented together in the shop, the temptation is to just get the whole set because it's there. So the first thing you want to consider is space, because you actually will not enjoy the nursery if it's crammed full with too much furniture. And yes, we need a lot of storage, and yes, we need to have as much storage and furniture as we want to. But in reality, you've got to think about the functionality and the practicality of life for you. What works for a friend isn't necessarily going to work for you. So you think about the space, what can I fit in there, and what are my absolute essentials? And so the second thing is your lifestyle. What is going to go on in that room? If you're lucky enough to have a big enough space that is exclusively for the baby, and you have an adjoining room for the night nurse or the nanny, that's brilliant. So you can put whatever you want in the room within reason, so that it's still a beautiful space. And when the baby becomes a toddler and starts to crawl, there's space for them to move around. So but then if you've got a standard size room, but yet you're going to have a nanny in there, or some people have grandparents come over, those are the things you think about. If I'm going to have my mom come over to spend some time, or my mother-in-law, I need to have a sofa bed in there, for example, that would give the baby, that would make sure that they're in there with the baby. If that's the case, you might want to consider scaling down the size of the cot. The standard cot in the UK is 70 by 140, but there are cots you can get, like we sell, pretty much all of our designs are sold in 2 sizes. So there is a smaller size, which is 60 by 120, which is okay until your baby's about 2.5 years old anyway. If you need more space, get a smaller cot, smaller piece, and fewer pieces of furniture. The other thing to consider is future children. If this is your first child and you're planning on having more babies, then don't go all pink for girls and blue for boys. Try and find a happy medium in between, so you can carry on using the furniture for a while.
Okay, that's some good tips there. I think it can be really tempting, I think, can't it? Like, you're going to all of these shops and you're staring at some really beautiful pieces of furniture. It can be really tempting. So I think it's always good to just take a step back and look at the choices that you've got before you go ahead. Good.
Yeah,
and with some of, I think the other thing that people have is the temptation to buy instantly in case that item goes out of stock and discontinue and stuff like that.
That's right.
Always,
that's true.
Yeah.
It's always a worry. That's very true. There is something else I need to say as well that's important, which is if you're using furniture that's been passed down to you from someone else, you've been gifted with a cot, make sure that you're aware of the latest safety standards and make sure that it is within reason, still very safe to use. The other thing you want to do is, whatever happens, is always buy a new mattress. Don't get a mattress that's been used by another baby. So
okay,
to bear in mind.
Good. Okay. If you could rank your 3 best designs of nursery, in what order would you rank them, and why?
Wow, that's a very hard one because I've loved them all. The most challenging nurseries I've ever done are the small ones, because you are battling with space. Space becomes your enemy, literally. But then it also has to be practical. I did do a very small nursery in Kensington a few years ago, and it was a safari design, funny enough. And that was a challenge, but I loved the end product, and the parents were really pleased. So because of the size of it, it meant that there was only a sprinkling of patterns that I chose to use, as opposed to having too much of it, because too much pattern gives the impression of it being fuller than it actually is. We had the walls in very pale grey, and had just blades of grass coming out from the ground as opposed to trees, and that was it, just a few blades of grass around. We had one, I think it was one animal we had above the cot, a mural painted. I work with mural artists a lot. That's because that's my game changer, because it transforms the room instantly. So we had a lion on the wall. It was a little boy, and he was called Leo. So that also was part of the reason we chose to have a lion on there, and we went for the safari theme. Another one I did was, again, a couple of years ago, that was in London. And that was, funny enough, was actually started off again as a safari theme, But halfway through, we changed it and we kind of came away from the safari. The couple had just come back from holiday, and that's what their inspiration was. But as time went on, they knew that it was just the euphoria of the time they were in. And we kind of went away from the safari and did a more neutral design. And it was they had a weeping ash tree in their garden. And I used that as my source of inspiration. And the challenge of that was that the tree was not in season, it was not in bloom, but we had to imagine what it would look like with the help of Google Images. But we had the actual tree painted on the wall with all of the nuts and all of the holes, and it was absolutely stunning. And so the tree was painted so that it started off on one side of the room, but it bent over and fell and cascaded right over the cot and then out of the window. So that was stunning. And we had very dark wood furniture to go with that, because that was pretty much what they had in their home. It's one of the things I do is work with existing design. So but that was quite a big job, because we changed the flooring and did quite a lot of work there.
What size was that room? Because I'm guessing, like with dark furniture, it would have been a bit bigger.
It was quite large. Yeah, it was quite sizable. Yeah, okay. It was quite a sizable room, and I mean, it had 2 windows. Even it was quite a big room. So
okay, all right.
Yeah, so that was that. Another one I've done, which is memorable, will be a pink and a gold nursery, and that was in Knightsbridge, and that was just superstar room. You know, that they just had gold stars against a pink background, and that was where all of the inspiration came from. But the furniture was white, so it was very simple, but it was very, very classy and very it wasn't tacky. Even though we had gold stars, it was very subtle, and it was stunning.
I guess it could be quite difficult to get the balance of how many stars and like the configuration of it.
Yeah, I mean, what we do is we just take the actual scale of the room, and then we do it on paper first of all, and then we represent it, and it kind of works out okay. I don't do all the math; I have help.
Can it be quite difficult to work with someone that wants to design their nursery? Like, what kind of challenges do you face? I'm sure it's not straightforward and simple.
Well, sometimes, like last summer, we did have a project that was very difficult, because we offer 2 different types of design services. We have a distance one, which everything's done by email and phone, and then we have a full design service where we go to the client's home. And this was a house that was abroad, which we could have gone, and we really wanted to go, but the family were traveling constantly, and there was no way that there was any provision for us to meet them. Okay. So the challenge was, I think that she had an idea in her head of what she wanted, and it was very difficult to translate that, because every time we tried to put it down on paper, they're like, yes, I like this part, but not this part. And so that was that can be challenging when a customer has got something in their head already that they want, and communication is difficult, so you are not able to pull it out of their minds. And so that was definitely can be a challenge. We've done a few projects outside of the United Kingdom, as far as the Middle East, and in Africa as well, and it's never really been a problem, but this one in particular was a challenge. I guess it was more the communication than anything else.
Okay. So then, leading on to some tips that you could offer our listeners. So if they're thinking about designing their first nursery, maybe their second nursery, what tips could you give?
First thing I would say is find something that you absolutely are in love with. It could be a memory that childhood memory. It could be a book. I did a playroom for a family who London in particular was precious to their hearts, the city of London. And what we did was we designed it around Paddington Bear. and
Oh.
just had it was absolutely stunning, really, really beautiful room. So find something that's precious to you. And what we did with that one was have them read, we represented some parts of the story on, on their walls. So that was really nice. It could be a brooch that your grandmother left you. It could be a favorite dress. It could be a holiday you've been to, like the couple I mentioned who went on a safari holiday. It could be anything at all, but something that makes you smile and makes you happy. And that can become your source of inspiration for the nursery. Because what people tend to do is look at hundreds of pictures on Instagram, or more frequently Pinterest, and they think, oh, I really want this room. But there are a lot of factors that go into why that room looks like that. Number one is lighting. You may not have the same amount of light as that room does, so you cannot have exactly what they have. You may not have the space. The configuration might be different. Your lifestyle might be completely different. You might need a sofa bed, whereas they don't. So it becomes hard to copy exactly what you say, and then disappointment follows when your completed room doesn't look like the one on Pinterest. So instead of going through the route of Pinterest as your starting point, use something you love as your starting point. Then you can go to Pinterest and get more inspiration from there. So that's one tip. The other thing is incorporate something it sounds a bit similar to my first point, but slightly different. Incorporate something that's important to you. So we've had clients who are sailors and wanted us to design a nursery that involved the fact that they were constantly at sea. We had a room with a world map on one side to represent the fact that they had been traveling. There was another family in the United States that were her parents, or I think it was her grandparents, were hunters by profession or by, I don't know, heritage.
Right. And
And so they wanted the woods represented. There was a client as well we had in Wales whose son absolutely loved the buffalo. And what we did was didn't actually.
favorite.
Oh yes, oh
Yeah.
absolutely. So you find elements that are love that you want to represent in the child. For some, it's education. There might be stacks of books, built in, or a library included in the design. So that's another tip. You can start off with a piece of fabric. It doesn't have to be, I want a gray room. You can grab a piece of fabric that you love and has different colors, and pull one single color from that, and that can form the background of the whole room. So that's something else you can do. Besides the other tips I mentioned, make sure that you measure your room and draw a plan on paper with all of the dimensions, and take that with you when you go shopping. If you go to a really good boutique or baby furniture shop, they will help you put your furniture in place in the room while you're there, so you can have a bit of a visualization, because you'll be very surprised that you might end up putting all the pieces in and then you can't even walk into the room, but then hey, they've sold what they needed to sell. So make sure that you have that with you.
Okay, some good tips. I think, like you said, it's all about making it personal to you and your family, right? I mean, finding stuff on Pinterest is always a good idea, but then you're copying someone else's, and it's not really
that's it. Exactly. Yeah.
So where can people find you?
So we are at 408 Kings Road in Chelsea, London. And we're open 10 to 6 Tuesday to Saturday. And on Mondays, we open by appointment only. Okay. We're also on the website, on the Wild Wide Web, at thebabycotshop.com, and on the social media handles as at the Babycot Shop. So that's where we're at.
Brilliant. Okay. And then we can list a couple of these workshops that you're going to be doing in the near future.
We haven't. So we're still working on the calendar. So they haven't, but I know for a fact that we're doing safety in the nursery, first aid for your baby. We're doing one on breastfeeding. And we are again repeating the millennial nursery. And the other ones are more children related, like storytelling. We have a professional storyteller coming to tell stories. So that's
Oh,
a
that's
good one.
amazing.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's going to be great.
Tux, it's been really nice having you on. And I
Oh,
hope this is of benefit to our listeners as well. And just in case you're listening, we're going to put a few of these links onto our blog. And hopefully, if you can share some of these images of the projects maybe that you've done, so
yes, I
that we
will
can
do.
relate to it, then that'd be great.
Will do. Thank you so much for having me, James. It's been an absolute pleasure. Appreciate
No
it.
problem. No problem. Thank you very much.
Okay. You're welcome. Have a nice evening.
Thanks.